Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In this episode, we'll be playing RimWorld, the sci-fi strategy survival colony simulator game where you'll have to survive long enough to eventually get to a ship and fly off the planet.
So the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, RimWorld is in full release and available on PC for $35.
So what exactly is the game? Well, in RimWorld, you will start every game by selecting your scenario. After that, you will then be given the option to choose a storyteller. And finally, you will then have to create your team in which you will start your game with. Now, if all of that seems a bit confusing, don't worry, as we're going to go ahead and dive right in to exactly what each of these are and how they affect the game. A scenario is essentially a way to decide how difficult your game will be at the very start. You could do the standard one, which is the crash landing, in which you will be given an assortment of tools, weapons, resources, and 3 survivors to work with. Or you could choose the hardest, which is naked brutality, in which you spawn with nothing, completely alone. There are of course a couple more options as well, not to mention the many mods that give you a different way to start each game.
Next up is your storyteller. Now, this is one of the most unique features of this game as it is where you choose the overall difficulty and how your game will play out. The first option you are given is Cassandra, who will slowly send more and more difficult things your way. After that, you have Phoebe, who will give you large gaps of time in between each disaster you must face, but will make them more difficult to handle. And then finally, you have Randy Random. Now, Randy is essentially the hardest version of this game as it will just throw completely randomized events your way. To give you an idea, he could decide to spawn a group of high-tech Marines to come at you on day 1. Or he could decide to give you $1,000 in a meteor that fell from the sky.
Now after you've chosen your storyteller, you will choose a difficulty level as well as whether or not you want to play on commitment mode. Commitment mode is super intense as everything you do is permanent since you can't save the game unless you're backing out to the home screen. Just to quote the game here, "There is a reason why Luke Skywalker didn't quit and reload the game when his family got killed. Loss and recovery is dramatic."
Now, the last major thing that you're going to have to do is build your team. You will be given a pool of survivors based on what scenario you had previously chosen. Each person has everything from relationships with other survivors to different starting stats, different perks, and different learning rates. The idea here is that your survivors are essentially random and you aren't going to get the perfect one no matter how many times you re-roll them. Once you have all the survivors on your team, you will then finally get to begin your journey onto RimWorld.
First up is choosing your location to spawn. This is super important as each location has different climates and resources within them. Just to give some examples here, some biomes have tons of trees, some have flowing rivers in which you can use to power your base, others have lots of mountains, while some are just so darn cold that you will freeze yourself to death in the first few days without a campfire. Now if you're looking at playing this game for the first time, as a quick tip, I would highly suggest that you start out somewhere near the equator on a river or mountain tile, as it will give you the best variety of resources and not too difficult of a climate to deal with.
Okay, so now that we are actually in the game, what is the gameplay like? Well, you have essentially everything you could possibly ask for in a colony survival simulator game. You can give priorities to your workers, you can force them to prioritize a specific task for that moment, you can build structures, base defenses, work with electricity, research things, and then so much more. At the beginning, your main goal will probably just be to feed yourself, but as time goes on, you will unlock more and more complicated things through the research tree to make this and everything else much more efficient. I have to say though that the research tree had a huge impact on me as it had a lot of depth compared to other similar games I've played before.
Now once you get settled and you've set up a small base, you'll probably want to have some more workers so you can grow and become powerful. Luckily, the game gives us a few different options in which to do this. You could start by getting lucky and find a crashed pod nearby from a random event. These tend to have a worker inside that you can try to restore the health of in hopes that they will decide to team up with you. Your other options include being able to imprison bandits and slowly over time, convincing them to join you, or hiring workers from the nearby towns found on the world map.
The world map is a place in which you can send caravans of your workers to accomplish tasks. You could send them out to complete a quest in which they will need to raid a small town, for an example, or you could also have the option to load them up with a ton of goods in order to sell them at nearby villages. Or maybe you're like some of my friends who wanted to start a new colony somewhere else, or even have 2 colonies at the exact same time. Now before we move on, let me just make this super clear to you guys. If I were to go into all the in-game aspects, we would be here all day long. But to put it simply, if you were to say expect it in a game like this, it's probably in there. I mean, there's combat, farming, building, research, electricity, food management, artwork, taming of animals, trading of people, skill leveling, and much, much more. And if by some chance it's not in the game already, then all you need to do is go to the Steam Workshop and download whatever mod adds it to the game for you.
So now it's time for the pros and cons section for the video. First up is the huge variety of difficulty and playstyle settings available. When you first start out, you get to choose a range of different scenarios, which will vastly change how your game plays out. Not to mention that there are 6 options for the difficulty that you want to play on. Now as far as the mods go for RimWorld, you can basically add anything you might want to the game, from crazy monsters to being able to birth offspring. After that, the devs included almost every mechanic most people would want from a colony sim game, such as farming, building, worker management, animal taming, quests, and so much more. In other words, if you can think of it, it's very likely that it's in this game. Next is that the devs go a step further and add plenty of unique gameplay aspects, such as the storytellers, which will vastly change the way you play the game. Another pro is that each colonist in RimWorld seems special and important to your mission. If you were to say lose your cook halfway through the game, then you probably would be devastated if you can't reload the save. And lastly is that RimWorld's crazy random events create many lasting memories for its players. Just to give you an idea here, I was attacked by a swarm of man-eating squirrels and nearly lost half my colonists about 8 hours into the game.
Now for the cons. And honestly, after playing this game for quite a while, we put our 24 hours in and then some. I mean, I think I had 60 hours on this game in total. We really couldn't find any cons. We even went out of our way to go and see if other people had major negative problems with it. And it seemed like there were only the occasional once in 1,000 people that seemed to have some random issue that didn't apply to anybody else. So we just don't have any cons for you today.
So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment for every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in RimWorld, we would want to get roughly 35 hours of enjoyment out of the $35 that we both spent. And after putting 24 played hours into this game, we give it 10 out of 10 potatoes. That's right, boys, we did it. It's our second golden potato ever on Game Advisor.
So is this game worth $35? To be honest, no, it's worth more than that. This game is the hidden gem that exists outside of non-major developers. I would have easily paid $60 for this game and still been extremely happy with my purchase. The game has every single thing I would ever want in a colony survival game. Then if by some chance it doesn't have something I want, I simply go download the mod that puts it in the game. If you are new to this genre, then this is a great place to start out your colony survival journey. This game is one, if not the best colony survival sim that I've ever played, and therefore is easily 100% worth the cost.
Now, if you guys want more money-saving content, consider subscribing to our channel, where we release new videos every single week, where we spend the money so you don't have to. Make sure you guys smash that like button, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.